Our intro music is provided by Kevin MacLeod at Incompetech.com.
Check out Night Dream's website at www.nightdreamstalkradio.com.
Hey, this is Gary from Night Dreams Talk Radio. I want to welcome a new sponsor to our show, PhoenixShaving.com. I know what you're thinking, right? Oh, another disposable razor company. Well, the fact is they're not. You remember the razors that your father and his father shaved with? Did you ever notice they didn't have, well, the embarrassing razor burn or ingrowing hairs or the razor bumps after they shaved? Did you notice they were also relaxed after they were done shaving? Well, the problem is these big corporations want to sell you razor after razor after razor. Think about how much money you spend a year on razors. Or do you use electric razor? Then you're going to find out what razor burn is. So you need to check out Phoenix Shaving Starter Kits. They come complete with the soap, the brush, and a 2.5-month supply of blades. And the most important part of it, an all-metal razor, built to last generations. So, hey, you can donate it to one of your sons when they turn 18. Check out PhoenixShaving.com and tell them that Gary from Night Dream said, hey, I want one. That's PhoenixShaving.com now.
You're listening to Night Dreams Radio with Gary Anderson.
Hey, that is me. Here it is already, the middle of the week, Wednesday. Boy, the week is going fast. I guess the older you get, too, it seems like time just goes so much faster. You know, when I was a little kid, I mean, to me, a week seemed like a year. And then when I hit my 30s, a week seemed like a matter of, well, maybe a few days. Now, at my age, boy, I mean, a month seems like a week. Is time speeding up? I don't know. I know one thing. I'm getting old. Hey, tonight we're going to talk about, a near-death experience and what it did to SARA Wiseman and, what got her to write her book and everything else. Sarah, are you there?
Yes, I am, Gary. Hi.
Hi. How's the weather? I think you're, in Oregon?
Yes, I'm in Oregon, so it's probably pretty similar, sort of that misty, northwesty sort of gloaming right now.
Well, you know what I find so strange, Art Bell back about 18 years ago, him and Whitney wrote a book called Earth Changes and all that stuff, and it's really weird. Up here, I live up in Gig Harbor, Washington, which is right off the Sound. It's a little nice community, with a little bit of fishing boats and pleasure boats and stuff like that. But you know what I found, it was so unique, is the last couple years, virtually no snow in the winter. And, when I moved here 20 years ago, I have a fish pond. I got a little mini farm. My fish pond would freeze solid, and these poor little fish would be like a huge ice cube, and I always, make a bet with one of my kids. You think they'll come back alive in spring when things thaw out. And then 3 years ago, it would freeze maybe for a couple of weeks. Then last year, it froze for maybe a couple weeks, if that much, and it wasn't solid. It had maybe an inch of thick ice. This year, it maybe had, if anything, a thin layer of ice, less than a quarter inch, and it lasted a week or so. And then, a couple weeks ago, we hit 90 degrees when, our top record was 77 degrees in the Seattle area. We hit 90-something. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we're kind of in the same pattern as you guys. We're not that far south, and same thing. I kept thinking, is winter even going to come this year. I kept bracing, we get the firewood stacked up and it's like, I don't think we even used the firewood. So very strange things afoot. And then, of course, people back east, I talked to somebody, they said that their schools are, they don't get out in mid-June. They have to go all the way into July to make up for their snow days. That's crazy.
Oh, yeah. I have a friend that lives in North Carolina. And, you have to worry about the hurricanes, and they seem to be more severe every year. The weather seems, to get a little bit colder and more chilly longer than, the previous years. And then if you live, I got friends that live in the Midwest, and I've had guests on the show, live in the Midwest and stuff like that. They're saying the tornadoes, the wind, the snow, and the cold has been getting worse. So, I mean, things might be changing.
Yeah, and even, Hawaii right now, as we're speaking, all the volcanic activity, that's, the Earth is not, this isn't normal times, so definitely, I certainly don't know the cause of it, but it definitely we're in some changes.
Oh, yeah. I actually knew a person. I don't know if they're still alive, but it was like about 15 years ago. He lived up in Tacoma, Washington, and his daughter, moved to Hawaii. And then he decided to go to Hawaii and got a job, basically taking people around the volcano, as a volunteer, ranger. And, and he was telling me even back then when he went back to see his daughter, she lived, maybe a couple miles from some of the lava flows. Now, I mean, there was a lot of people actually bought houses near it because they could buy really cheap for Hawaii, But,
that's right.
But I'm reading now is that a lot of those homes are now gone.
Right. They've just been in that path of that red fiery flow path. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see how that our Pacific Northwest Ring of Fire, if it's the next to go, or if we're going to be all okay. We'll just have to wait and find that out.
Well, as long as Mount Rainier up here doesn't go, I mean that, I live not very far away from Commencement Bay. I mean that's over the bridge, the Narrows Bridge, away from me. And they're saying if that ever went, the mud flows and all that stuff would come down and kill tens and tens of thousands of people.
Yeah,
so, that's a part that's scary.
I was a kid. I grew up in Seattle, and I don't know how old I was, but I was not out of the house yet. And I remember when Mount St. Helens blew, and I remember looking towards Lake Washington and seeing this giant cloud, and I thought it was like a nuclear bomb. That's what I thought it was, because that was the only frame of reference I had at that age. That was really something. And then there was ash all over. So hopefully everybody,
I remember stepping out when they said it actually went. I stepped out from where I was living. And in fact, I was in Seattle too. And I was in Seattle, and I remember just looking at it, and it looked like a plume, like from a nuclear detonation. Just, it was huge, and it was kind of scary. It's something, and I could actually, you could even hear some of the rumbles, even up in Seattle, depending where you were, between the traffic, if you were, more in a secluded area. So that's kind of scary, but, I don't know. I guess life goes on in one form or another, so I'm not going to really worry about it, unless part of California and part of Oregon and Washington are, beachfront property, the whole state, then I'll start getting worried.
Right. Well, you're right. Life goes on. We just got to go one day at a time and see how we do.
Yeah. Well, now, hey, since I did some talking there, it's your turn. Why don't you tell everybody out here, Sarah, what you do and why you wrote your book and what made you make this decision to write that book?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I always wanted to be two things: a writer, which I knew, and always had those typewriters, old-fashioned typewriters. We always had a lot of those around the house. I knew I wanted to be a writer. And I always also, my dad was a professor at UW, and he always gave me like his old dictaphones and tape recorders, and I always had a huge pile of that little technology, if I guess you could call it that technology back then. But so I would just always talk into it. And so funny thing now, of course, I am a writer, I'm an author, and I also have a radio show too, and do quite a bit of recording. And I think that's so interesting that those two things that were so prevalent for me, have still come forward. But what I didn't expect, Gary, I didn't expect to be a writer of spiritual or New Age type material. I'm not sure what kind of category we want to put it in, but I never expected that. I always kind of thought I'd be a novelist. But in 2000, I was on a plane, and something went wrong with the plane. And we believed, everybody right there for those few minutes when everything was shaking and rumbling, when you were talking about the volcano, I just kind of thought about that again. Everything, we just thought we were going to all go down, and we didn't go down. But in that moment of terror and the life, it really does flash before your eyes, the whole movie of everything you've ever, known or experienced just came pouring through. And for me, something in that moment of the sheer terror or the shock or the trauma, I don't know what exactly it was, but when I got off the plane, when we did land, we did an emergency landing, I wasn't the same person anymore. And I think the way that when I looked into it, later, sometimes you talk about having a spiritual opening or a spiritual awakening, or sometimes just an opening. It's sort of like, in The Wizard of Oz, when Dorothy comes out from the tornado and everything's black and white, and then she suddenly steps out of the house and it's all, super technicolor. And that was kind of, my life was just, I was different. And that was the beginning of this entire journey that kind of, instead of being a novelist of chick lit, I think that's what I wanted to write. I found myself, that's where I was at. And I found myself just deeply interested in all these questions about, being psychic or reincarnation, or why are we here, and what is the soul, and who are the guides, and what is mediumship, and all of that. That became my whole path of exploration.
Well, Sarah, when something happens, back around, I would say in the mid 80s, I got hit on, I bought a brand new van. I didn't even get it home to show my wife at the time. And a guy hit me doing about 50, 60 miles an hour head on. And it literally tore my seat, off the floorboard of the van. And I was thrown in the back of the van. And everything was like in real slow motion. It happened instantly, but I could just see everything it was real weird. It was really, really slow. The next thing I know, I'm like laying in the back of the van, and to the state patrol, got me out of it. And, it was really, it opened up my eyes about death, because, it can happen so fast. But I could never, I don't know how it was when you were in that airplane, but like with me, again, it was in slow motion. So what maybe happened in a millisecond